Hey, what's happening, everybody? So the intent is to finish up the table with this flat out flat. I need to apply at least 3 coats. It's going to be 2+ hours in between every coat. You need to apply it with a synthetic brush according to the instructions. So we're going to get started. The intent on using this, in addition to the oil that I already put onto it, is this is supposed to provide maybe just a little bit extra hardness or a little bit more preventative maintenance, other than going full out resin and putting a hard coat on there. So the intent is to be able to do something not quite as hard as resin, but to add a little bit more than oil. So this is what we're gonna go with, and we'll see how it goes. All right, thanks. So as applying that coat, one thing I learned is I needed to go a lot heavier than I started off with. Some parts before I even finished were already dry, and so it's kind of hard to tell where I had been and where I had not been. And I'm definitely going to start from one corner and do a little bit more methodical approach throughout the bench, instead of starting in the center and working one way, because that way didn't work too well for me. But I now got the first coat on. I am now 2 hours away from putting on the next coat. Alright, so now it's time to do the next coat. So the first thing that I gotta do is take a 220 or better sanding block and go ahead and sand it down a little bit, scuff it up, and then we'll add the next coat. So now that I got it prepped, the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna reread the directions, make sure I haven't forgot anything, and then we'll commence with the second step. So one of the steps that I just remembered, thank goodness, because I reread it, is I need to remove the dust. Probably seems obvious, but I almost forgot. So while that light coat is drying, I'm going to go ahead and stir up the flat compound, the top coat, and we're going to go ahead and then lay it down. So by the time I finish stirring it up again, it'll be ready to go ahead and paint. And I'll start on that end since it seemed to be a little heavier down here. All right. So when I read the directions, it was very explicit. Use a liberal amount. So I'm going to make sure I use a liberal amount this time. Okay, so I have my liberal coat on, and I'm trying to prevent it from pulling up in areas. It looks like it's coming down pretty even. I'm looking for any sort of white milky areas that show that it might be pulling, or I have a little bit of excess, and I'm just going over them methodically and uniformly, and hopefully to prevent, to support it to be drying an even coat, because the next coat, if I do it right, I'm done, and then I'll just let it dry, and it'll be time to start putting the legs on. Okay, so I'm just going to keep finishing, moving the finish around to make sure it doesn't pull up anywhere. And then once I get done with that, I'm going to be going in with where the hardware are with the paper cloth and removing all the excess that is starting to form in there. I may even take the hardware out one last time, kind of clean it out with a Forstner bit, and then put the hardware in, just so that it looks really clean. And also I'm going to use the paper towel and clean underneath, so that I don't have any excess sort of pooling or dripping towards the edges here. So from the side view, when I start to look at it at an angle, I'm starting to see the top coat to it now. But looking straight down on top of it, it looks flat, and I don't really see any difference than what the original oil finish was. So this looks like it might have had the right choice, but we'll do one more coat, maybe another coat, depends on how heavy I do the last coat, potentially the last coat, and go from there. I'm pretty confident I'm going to take out the hardware and clean out the excess top coat that's gone with inside the countersink holes. But you have at least 2 more hours to go before I can do the next one. I don't know if I'm going to do it tonight. It's starting to get a little late, so I might do it tomorrow. But until then, all right, so we are on the more than likely last coating. I'm going to go ahead and scuff her up, apply the heavy thick coating, clean up the edges and make sure it doesn't pull up, and then we are going to just let it dry overnight, and we'll be back and see how it comes out. All right, here we go. All right, well, she's drying. That's maybe the last coat. When we get up in the morning, I'll take a look at, see what it looks like, and maybe we'll put one more coat on, or maybe that's just a wrap and we're done, and we'll look to start putting on the legs. All right, have a good night. Thank you. Hey, good morning, everybody. I was getting ready to go for my morning run. Even got my Cofro 19 going on to help with speed. And I figured since I'm rigged for speed, I would go ahead and just do one more coat on this bench prior to my run, so that it would be able to dry while I'm out. And by the time I get back, it should be done, and I'll be able to film it. But I decided on doing one extra coat just because that first coat was so light. So yeah, let's go ahead and mix it up sand, wipe off the dust, and lay down the last coat. All right, let's do it. Okay, now that I got it on pretty thick, I'm just going to keep going over it and over it till all the white little pooling where I went to have a little too much material is laid evenly throughout. And then we'll clean up the bottom and the holes where the hardware is, and that'll be it. I'll go for my run. All right. Okay, so I just finished doing all the touch-ups, and that's definitely going to be the last one. I could tell on this coat that the wood, or it might be a little bit cooler now, but the wood didn't seem to be soaking up the liquid. It seemed like the liquid was riding on top of the wood. So I think the coat, this is the last coat. This is definitely going to be the last coat. So I'm going to let this dry while I'm running, and then when we come back, we'll take one look and see how the matte finish came out. All right, thank you. So one of the things that I forgot to show on this video was how there was no after photo. So if you look here, it's you can't really see the flat top coat. However, when you get this angle, you can kind of see where it looks a little waxy, a little milky. But again, you go from that, go into looking straight down on it, and you don't see it. All right, thank you for watching.